Sarah moved slowly through the first-class cabin, her military pack pulling heavily on her shoulders. She was heading for her seat in economy, tight and familiar after months of cramped conditions. Her face showed how tired she was, but she held herself upright, her posture still sharp with the discipline of a soldier. A few people glanced at her as she passed. She kept her eyes ahead, focusing on finding her seat, any seat, just to rest. As she passed one of the rows, an older man stood up. He wasn't in uniform, but something about him felt steady and calm. "Ma'am," he said politely, "I think you're in my seat." Sarah blinked, confused. She quickly pulled out her ticket, her vision a little blurry from the long hours and little sleep. But after a second look, she realized he was wrong. Her seat was farther back. Before she could explain, the man smiled gently. There was something warm and honest in his face. "Please," he said, "take this one. I'd like you to have it." She froze for a second. Everything she'd been taught told her to say no, but the look in his eyes wasn't about pity. It was about respect. And for once, she didn't have the energy to argue. She gave a quiet, almost whispered, "Thank you," and carefully lowered herself into the soft seat. It was more comfort than she'd felt in weeks. The man gave her a small nod and headed toward her original seat in economy. There was a shift in the cabin. A few heads turned. Some people seemed surprised. Others just watched quietly. Sarah didn't care. For the first time in a while, someone had done something kind just because. She let herself relax. The seat was soft, steady, and safe. Nothing like the hard bunks she'd gotten used to on base. Even with the unexpected comfort of the seat, Sarah felt a small wave of unease creep in. She wasn't used to this kind of softness. Her world was made of gravel roads, long patrols, and stiff benches. This wasn't her usual terrain. Around her, quiet murmurs from other first-class passengers started to reach her ears. A woman in a sleek pantsuit gave her a warm smile. An older couple nearby shared a glance, maybe thinking of someone they loved who wore a uniform too. But not everyone looked pleased. A man in a crisp business suit adjusted his silk tie and forced a tight smile, his eyes holding something colder, resentment maybe. Sarah had been stared at before. Being a woman in uniform always drew attention, for better or worse, but here in this calm and polished world, the stares felt heavier. Her boots looked wrong against the soft carpet. Her uniform didn't blend in with the designer clothes around her. She felt like an outsider in a place that wasn't built for her. Across the aisle, a woman named Jessica watched quietly. She wasn't usually in first class either. She'd splurged on an upgrade with leftover birthday money. A writer by profession, Jessica loved watching people. Their expressions, their posture, the little things they did without realizing, it all told stories. And the soldier in front of her? She was full of them. Jessica noticed more than just tired hands and stiff shoulders. She thought she saw gratitude in Sarah's eyes at first, but then caught something else. Guilt? Maybe shame. It didn't quite match the picture of someone simply thankful for a kind gesture. The mood in the cabin, the quiet undercurrents of emotion, started piecing together in Jessica's mind. There was a deeper story here, one she could feel but not claim. And she knew better than to invade it. This was Sarah's story to tell, if she ever chose to. Still, the moment stirred something in Jessica. Watching that quiet act of kindness unfold had left an impression. It wasn't just about swapping seats. It was about someone giving up comfort without needing praise. It reminded her that respect isn't shown through speeches or grand gestures. It's often found in the quiet ways we carry each other's loads, even for a short while. Jessica's hand shook slightly as she dug through her bag, finally pulling out a small notebook and a pen. The words started to come fast. Quick thoughts, bits of conversation she'd heard, the way people had looked at the soldier. Her writer's instinct kicked in, trying to capture the heart of what had just happened. But as she wrote, it hit her. Words weren't enough. Not this time. On impulse, she tore out a page. Instead of notes, she scribbled down a short message. It wasn't perfect, but she hoped it said enough. It was meant for the man now sitting back in coach, the one who'd given up his seat without fanfare. She paused, unsure what to write. Thank you felt too small. Well done felt wrong. She settled on something simple. C31B, please accept a drink or snack on me. If everyone treated people the way you treated that service woman, the world would be a better place. Her hand hovered over the bottom of the page. Part of her wanted to stay anonymous, but something nudged her, and she signed her name, Jessica Titus. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added a quick line, Buy yourself a drink. I'm a writer hoping to learn from your kindness. She tucked the note and a few folded bills into an envelope. Would he get it? Would he understand this wasn't about the snack? It didn't matter. Writing it had helped her sort through what she was feeling. It gave shape to something bigger than the moment itself. Glancing over, Jessica looked at Sarah again. The soldier hadn't moved much. She sat quietly, eyes fixed out the window, her face calm but distant. There was a stillness about her, not peace exactly, more like control. Jessica wondered if Mark's gesture, meant to honor her, had also placed her in an uncomfortable spotlight. Did the soft seat feel more like a burden than a gift? Jessica thought about that. For Mark, maybe it was just a simple, kind decision. For Sarah, it might have been more complicated, maybe even painful. A reminder of the gap between her world and the one she was passing through. It struck Jessica that real kindness isn't just about the act, it's about understanding the layers behind it. It's seeing people not just as symbols, but as whole stories, even when those stories are kept quietly hidden. Hours had passed, the steady hum of the engines blending with the low murmur of passengers, creating a kind of soft background noise. It had lulled Jessica into a light doze, her head tilted slightly against the seat. But a sudden movement pulled her back. Across the aisle, Sarah shifted uncomfortably, trying to settle into the wide seat that still seemed to offer no rest. Her shoulders tensed, and the unease on her face was unmistakable. It was like she was carrying something she couldn't put down, even here, in a place meant for rest. Jessica's eyes dropped to the floor. Just beside Sarah's boots was a battered olive-green duffel bag, the kind nearly every soldier carried. But it wasn't just the bag itself that caught her attention. It was the way Sarah kept it close, how her fingers would tighten around the strap anytime it moved too far from her. There was something more in it than just gear. Jessica could sense it. Maybe it was filled with reminders from home, things that kept Sarah grounded. Or maybe it carried the kind of weight that wasn't physical, memories she couldn't escape. The more Jessica watched, the more her curiosity shifted into something deeper. Sarah's earlier quietness now felt like it was hiding something. And that duffel bag, with its fraying seams and worn handles, felt like a symbol of all the things she'd carried and was still carrying. This flight wasn't just a ride home, it was something heavier, something layered. Then Sarah leaned back suddenly, eyes squeezed shut. Jessica saw her chest rise with a sharp breath, and a quick wince passed over her face before she could hide it. It wasn't the kind of pain you showed to get attention. It was the kind you tried to bury. Jessica's chest tightened. Was it an old injury still aching from time in the field? Or something harder to name, hurt that doesn't show up on X-rays, the kind that lingers in the mind long after the battle ends? For just a second, Sarah had let something slip. A crack in the armor. A glimpse of something real and raw beneath all the control. And even though Jessica couldn't know the full story, she felt it. The deep ache of someone who had been through more than most could imagine. Questions spun in Jessica's mind, piling up faster than she could answer them. Where was Sarah headed? What had brought her across the country carrying so much, physically, emotionally? The pieces didn't fit together yet. Sarah clearly guarded her story, holding it close like that duffel bag by her feet. But Jessica could feel something powerful beneath the surface. As a writer, she felt the pull of a story that mattered. A story of strength, pain, and maybe something redemptive hidden beneath the weight of it all. Still, she knew her place. This wasn't hers to tell. Not yet, maybe not ever. But time was on her side. The flight wasn't over. She could watch quietly. Sometimes stories revealed themselves slowly. The most honest ones needed room to breathe, and someone willing to wait, to witness, and to write them with care when the time came. With one last look at Sarah, who had finally drifted into a light, uneasy sleep, Jessica made up her mind. It was time to send the note to Mark. A few rows back in economy, Mark blinked when the flight attendant appeared beside him, holding a small white envelope. "This is for you, sir." A passenger asked me to pass it along. He accepted it, eyebrows raised slightly. What could this be? A drink coupon? A polite thank you? He tore it open and read the note. Just a few lines. Simple, but they hit hard. His face shifted as he took it in. Surprise first, then something quieter, heavier. He glanced forward, toward first class. Was there more to that moment than he'd thought? Was that soldier someone important to the writer who sent the note? Or maybe the gesture had meant more than even he realized. Mark leaned back in his seat, the note still in hand. He hadn't always worn suits and ties. Before all this, before the job, the meetings, there had been a different life. Different clothes. He let his eyes close and old images surged up. Not boardrooms, not offices, field tents, soaked in sweat and fear, the cries of the wounded, the smell of blood and dirt, not bullets. He wasn't a fighter, but he'd been close enough. A medic, one who saw what others couldn't unsee. His throat tightened. For years he'd tried to move on, blend in, maybe even forget. But this moment, this seat swap, had pulled something back into focus. Mark opened his eyes again, his gaze drifting forward toward Sarah. She still slept, unaware. His gesture hadn't been about kindness for kindness' sake. Not really. It was something deeper. A quiet salute. A nod from one soul carrying the weight of the past to another. This wasn't pity, it was respect. The kind that comes from knowing, from remembering, from seeing what most people miss in their rush to stay comfortable. Maybe what he did wasn't small after all. Maybe, just maybe, it meant exactly what it needed to. As the plane began its descent, Sarah stirred awake. She straightened in her seat and reached for her duffel bag, her movements steady and precise. There was still the quiet discipline of a soldier in the way she moved, but now something softer threaded through it. She seemed lighter somehow. Her eyes drifted across the aisle, and for a brief second they met Mark's. He gave a calm, respectful nod. Without hesitating, Sarah stood. She stepped into the narrow aisle, navigating the tight space with a kind of practiced ease. Mark rose to meet her almost without thinking. There was no formality between them, no need for introductions. Just a shared understanding. They spoke quietly, only a few words, barely above a whisper. Not to keep anyone out, but because what they were saying wasn't meant for anyone else. Their voices carried weight, even in their softness. It wasn't about what was said, it was about what didn't need to be. Then Sarah reached out. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed something small into Mark's open palm. Her fingers hovered there for a moment longer than expected, and then she stepped back, returning to her seat. Mark stayed still for a beat, watching her go. He felt something shift inside him. There was a new ease to the way Sarah sat down and buckled her belt. Her shoulders relaxed just a bit. A faint sense of calm, maybe even relief, touched her expression. She looked for the first time all flight, like someone who could finally take a breath. Mark sensed it clearly. She hadn't just accepted a kind gesture. She had let go of something she'd been carrying for far too long, and she'd placed it in the hands of someone who understood. As he settled back into his seat, Mark opened his hand. In it was a photo. The edges were worn and curled, the image slightly faded. On the back, written in careful handwriting, were these words, "Courage is almost a contradiction in terms. It means a strong desire to live taking the form of readiness to die." The face in the photo was young, a soldier. His eyes shone with hope, youthful, trusting. Dog tags hung at his neck, catching the light even through the print. It was the kind of picture someone would keep close, carried through battle and across miles. A reminder, a memory. Mark stared at it and the pieces came together. Sarah wasn't just a soldier heading home. She was carrying something more, a final mission, not from orders, but from loyalty. The look in her eyes, the way she guarded that duffel bag, the moment they'd shared, it all made sense now. She was delivering something irreplaceable. Not supplies, not equipment, but memory. A final piece of someone who never made it back. Someone whose story she refused to let be forgotten. Mark felt something stir deep within him, an old pain, never far away, rising again. Grief wasn't just about someone being gone. It was about the quiet ache of what could have been, the weight of memories and guilt that came from still being here when others weren't. And Sarah, she carried that too. It was clear now. She wasn't just a soldier heading home. She was something more, a quiet link between those still walking and those forever lost. She was keeping their stories alive in the only way that truly mattered, by carrying them forward. Across the cabin, Jessica watched it all unfold. She'd seen that brief exchange between Sarah and Mark. Now she noticed how Mark gently held the photograph in his hands, as if it was something fragile, something sacred. There was a deeper story here, one made of shared pain, of silent understanding between two people who'd carried more than anyone could see. Jessica's heart longed to write it all down, every detail. But she also knew some stories weren't hers to tell. Some were meant only to be witnessed, held with care, not shared. She'd always believed in the power of words, but now she understood something more. Real connection didn't always need them. It showed up in quiet moments, when Sarah passed the photo into Mark's hand, when his eyes said, "I understand," when the businessman in first class gave her a nod filled with something deeper than politeness, respect, maybe even regret. These moments said more than pages ever could. Some stories lived not in sentences, but in looks, in silence, in how we carried the weight of each other's burdens. As passengers began to file off the plane, Jessica looked one last time at Sarah and Mark. They blended into the crowd, just two more people in an airport full of goodbyes and new beginnings. But Jessica knew better. These weren't just two strangers. They had shared something real, something most would never notice, but that she would never forget. It wasn't about uniforms or jobs. It was about sacrifice, about honor, about the extraordinary moments hidden inside the everyday. Do you have a story about veterans making a difference in the lives of others? We'd love to hear it. Please share it in the comments. And if this story moved you, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. There are so many untold stories out there. Let's keep telling them together. Until next time.